Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Nevena Bajalat, welcoming you once again to the podcast where we bring you amazing guests, experts in different areas that can share their expertise and knowledge and experience with you so you can grow and scale your business. Today, I have a special guest coming to us from New York. His name is Thomas Frank, and he's the founder of Frank Law Firm. He is a lawyer. He's an expert, and today we're going to talk about a topic of bankruptcy, which is very, very important. And he's an entrepreneur himself. So, Thomas, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Davina.
So, tell us a little bit more your backstory. Did you study law? I'm assuming you became a lawyer, and then you decided to have your own law firm. How was that journey for you? And yeah, what have you always been passionate about law?
I wouldn't say I've always been passionate about law. I always, like as a kid, I always liked history. And if you're studying history or you're reading about history, it's so closely tied to the law. So that is kind of like what segued in my interest into the law. But I didn't decide that I wanted to study the law or be an attorney until I was in my 20s or, early 20s, something like that. And I was in college, didn't really have a drive to do anything in particular. And then one day I decided like this is what I'm going to do. So I went to St. John's Law, which is in Queens, New York. And after that I clerked for a couple of judges, which is you're basically assisting the judges with their calendar,
Okay.
writing decisions, meeting with juries, things like that. And you get like this excellent crash course on the law. And you see great attorneys, awful attorneys, middle of the road attorneys. You hear great arguments, you hear awful arguments. You hear people lose their cool. You see attorneys always keep it together. So you really are given a great example of how to be, right? How to do this the correct way. And after that, I worked for a firm called Greenspoon Martyr, which is it's a national law firm. Their headquarters is in Florida, but they're in LA, Chicago, New York, Texas, DC. They're everywhere. And we were living in Miami at the time, so I worked in their Fort Lauderdale office. And then we actually moved back, and I worked in their Midtown office. And then around that time, I we started the Frank Law Firm in July 2018. And it actually happened because my mentor in the law, he had his own practice. He had had it for 20 years or something like that. And he was done. He didn't want to do the law anymore. He had given it what he was going to give it, and he wanted to do other businesses, which he had already started, and they were taking off. So he was done. And he said, Tommy, I want you to take over my law practice. So that's how it started, right? Over a dinner at a steakhouse with another colleague. And he said, yeah, listen, you buy it from me. We'll do this transition. And that's how it happened. At the time, I was 30 years old, which was way, it's much, most attorneys don't go out on their own until they're a little older than that. Even now at 36, it would be somewhat of a young thing to undertake. But we started then and been running it ever since.
That's a great story, and thank you for sharing with us. And I love that you mentioned something which is hands-on experience, which I believe. And in building a business, I'm sure you know as well. Even when we go to business school, there are things that you cannot learn until you are in that environment. And I think the reason why you started your own practice so early is because you got early on that hands-on experience that gave you so much exposure and information, and like you said, what to do, how to be, how not to be. And that's I think that was very crucial and important. So you guys are specializing. I know today we want to talk about bankruptcy because I want to explain some concepts to the listeners and also learn myself from you. And so tell us a little bit more. Are you specializing only in bankruptcy? And then we're going to go from there talking about that topic.
Sure. So my principal practice or specialty is litigation. Bankruptcy falls within that to a large extent. So does commercial litigation. We do a lot, and then foreclosure. All of it really wraps around the same thing. It's a lawsuit about finances, right? This secured, this debtor didn't pay their secured lender, so there's a lawsuit. Or this commercial landlord hasn't been paid by their commercial tenant, so there's a lawsuit. There's so many things that happen in business. There's so many different disputes that can arise. And when that happens, you need an attorney not on standby, but you need to have counsel that you know and trust that can handle a variety of these issues. And it's just, as you know, business is such a big umbrella where so many different things can go wrong. You could have branding issues, trademark issues, marketing issues, breach of contract issues with a vendor. You didn't meet payroll for whatever reason. Like all these things can happen, and they give rise to these whole host of legal issues. And the beautiful thing about bankruptcy, which is a portion of our expertise, is the first thing they told us in law school about bankruptcy is that it covers everything. You will deal with everything inside of bankruptcy. And the reason is it's a field of law, but the law that the bankruptcy code gives you like one piece of the puzzle. But in order to apply it, you need to know the state real property laws of the jurisdiction you're in. So New York, New Jersey, Florida, they each have their own real property law. Then you need to deal with the UCC, or you could be dealing with a matrimonial issue. So like all these different things come under bankruptcy. So you have to know how to maneuver all these different fields of law. And it's very engaging from a professional standpoint. You have to deal with so much. You're always intrigued by it. But from our expertise perspective, it's commercial litigation and bankruptcy. And that's because we principally represent small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses. And those issues just consistently come up.
So that's perfect because our listeners are usually mostly entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses. So what are some of the most common, let's start there. Let's maybe name three most common problems that small, medium-sized businesses have that they come to you. And then let's talk how they can protect themselves from that from a legal standpoint.
I think the most common issue we see is definitely with landlords, right? Whatever the lease is for the business. So, plenty of businesses, especially nowadays, don't have a brick and mortar. They don't have to have a physical footprint, but a lot of them still do. And when COVID happened, you saw the first wave of COVID kill businesses that were already on the fringe. They were already on life support. COVID was the fatal blow. They couldn't even make it to the first round of PPP or EIDL. They were done. And then the ones that were not quite on life support, but they were headed there, they were able to survive for a period of time because of PPP and EIDL. But what we saw cause the issue of that first wave of business closures was issues with the landlord. They had a monthly overhead rent cost that was burdensome to begin with, and then they just couldn't keep up with it after COVID. There was just not enough income because the world had shut down. And we see that consistently as the primary problem, that this is that monthly cost. If they chose a bad location, they chose a difficult landlord, there was problems with the unit to begin with. That's always the first problem we're dealing with, is that.
Yeah.
And we tell everyone, right? My partner, not too long after COVID, she was like, we should get bigger space for our office. And I was like, absolutely not. There's no way I'm going to let that happen. Our office space rent is so manageable. If you increase it to, even marginally, you're just setting yourself up for exposure. If your office space does what it has to do, or your business location does what it has to do for you, that's it. Don't rock the boat. Don't get too big for your britches. Stay right there, because if the bottom falls out, that's the first guy who's coming. And once you're evicted, that business is done. We just had a client who, long-standing business in the community, 40 years. We've helped them with so many different legal issues. The one thing we could not resolve is an unhappy landlord.
Hmm.
And if you're behind too far, you're out. That's it. Business is closed. I don't care how much goodwill you have within the community. You know,
Yeah.
that's going to be the end of it. So
Yeah.
that's the number one problem. That's probably the first and second problem we see with
Yeah,
small
and
businesses.
and it's so important for everyone listening, like to just learn and understand that depends. But like you said, we have to calculate the cost. And I would say that I'm based in Dubai, and rent is definitely the highest cost. I think probably the highest cost many businesses have. And like you said, they go out of the business because of the rent. Either they cannot keep up, so the rent since COVID, of course, because COVID brought the rent prices much down. Now the market it's again on a very high peak. So a lot of businesses, they start the next year, they have to renew, they cannot because the rent had increased a lot, and they cannot, and then they have to increase the price of the product and services, which is then of course not attractive for the clients if they're not like a very strong brand, right? So there is of course a lot
Right.
of, but definitely for small and medium-sized businesses, I would say rent is definitely their biggest expense. And I agree, it kills so many businesses. So tell us, Thomas, about bankruptcy. Like, when is bankruptcy bad? And I know bankruptcy can be very good. So it's obviously a word that nobody wants to go through, or we think it's like a defeat and we failed. But there are actually ways, especially in US, right? Here we had different tax laws, and it was tax free. Now we are starting with corporate tax, but we don't have certain things. And I know that tax is a huge part of United States and business there. So I know bankruptcy helped so many people in certain situations. So tell us, when is bankruptcy bad and when it's good?
So it's not like a black and white answer as to when it's bad, when it's good. It's really dependent on the person and their, or the company and their, uh what they're okay with and what they're trying to accomplish. Usually we tell clients bankruptcy is the last resort. It's
Yes.
the last thing you do. It's very rarely the first thing. Because whether it's consumer bankruptcy or corporate bankruptcy, you are forfeiting a lot of control once you enter into that arena. There's a lot of oversight, as there should be. If you file for a Chapter 11, there's oversight from the U.S. Trustees Office, which is a branch of the Department of Justice. And if you file for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, there's a trustee assigned to that case as well. And they're looking over your finances and making sure everything's on the up and up. So it's the last resort almost all the time. But there comes a point in time where you can't deal with all the creditors that are pursuing you, and you may have a very viable business. It just may be a feeding frenzy. There's too many creditors to deal with at one point in time. So the purpose of bankruptcy, in the United States is to prevent the feeding frenzy. When you file for bankruptcy, the automatic stay goes into effect. And that's the most powerful injunction in the United States court system. The moment you click file for the petition, the automatic stay goes into effect and no creditor can pursue you without asking permission of the court. So no bank restraints, no, the lawsuit stop, everything stops. It's supposed to be a breathing spell so that everyone can get an understanding of the financial condition of the person or company that filed for bankruptcy. What are their assets? What are their liabilities? What's their income? What's their expenses? How much is left on their lease? Can we sell this business? Should we liquid? All these different things are now able to be considered because every creditor knows they have to stop. So that's really the purpose. It was described to me in law school as the collective pool problem. So if you had $100,000 and you owe 10 people $100,000, you can't give everyone 100 grand. You could pay one creditor their full amount of money, but then everyone else would get nothing. What's equitable is that everybody get a little bit, but not everything. So you should take, in theory, that 100 grand that you have and pay each creditor 10,000 because they're each owed the same, and that's an even distribution of the money you have. But without, and that's what bankruptcy requires. But without bankruptcy, whoever got to you first as a creditor would collect that full 100,000, and everybody else would get nothing. So bankruptcy is good when the debtor, whoever it is, cannot continue to maintain their current creditor pool, and they need that breathing spell. They need that process to get everyone under a plan or some other setup where they're either getting paid or the person's just getting a discharge and the debt's going to be forgiven. That's when it's good. It's bad when it's when you file for bankruptcy, you have to do so in good faith, right? You're asking the court for help, equitable help. So you can't show up there with bad intentions. If you're going to go there to try to game the system, it's not going to work out for you. It's a very bad idea. And if you've been running your business very poorly or not exactly ethically, it's not going to be a good scenario, and you should avoid bankruptcy like the plague. But for a good, honest, just unfortunate company or person, bankruptcy is going to provide you a lot of different remedies. So what we see a lot of times is, especially post-COVID, is you'll have these businesses, a restaurant, which we saw tons of, or just any other company, all those obligations that were signed on behalf of the company were personally guaranteed by the shareholder, right? Because it's a small, closely held company. So when the bottom falls out, business closes, creditors are suing the entity, they're also going to sue that personal guarantor. And now this individual who had no liability before COVID has seven-figure liability that they're never going to be able to pay. Back rent, loans to the SBA, loans to other banks, credit cards, just massive liability. And in a situation like that, a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 personal bankruptcy can resolve a lot of that debt, either wipe it out or have it paid throughout a course of a plan. And in that situation, it's such a great option because otherwise they would spend the rest of their life just avoiding those creditors. They would never get out from underneath it. And that's not a way to live.
Yeah. And of course, business, there are different stages, and there are many businesses go out of business. So it's just important to know these things. And I think you kind of answered my question because I wanted to ask you the next thing is when a company or personal bankruptcy. I'm guessing this depends on the situation and individual situation, maybe countries. But if let's say a company owed, like you said, 10 creditors, 100,000, but they only have 100,000, they have to distribute 10 to each. What happens after, like when they're bankrupt? Do they get a payment plan? Like you said, they have to pay off because that's still a lot of money. And if a person doesn't have any other businesses to run, how are they getting out of it? Or it gets wiped out, like you said, by the court?
Sure. So for a corporation or a business entity that's filed for Chapter 11, what they're going to do there, their goal is to get a reorganization plan. So they're looking at all the different levels and priority of creditors. There's secured creditors, there's trade creditors, there's employees that haven't been paid, and they all have a different priority. Who should get paid first? And then there's just unsecured creditors, credit card companies, vendors who've provided goods a long time ago that haven't been paid. And the Chapter 11 plan is to pay all these creditors over a period of time that everyone agrees to, or the debtor can force them to accept it based on the bankruptcy law. And that's how you're working it out from that perspective, where you're getting everyone just to accept less, or you're getting them to accept what they're owed, but over time, right? You're not going to get paid everything up front. You're going to get paid everything over the course of 5 years, but you're going to be paid.
Yeah.
So that's a positive resolution for a business. But if, for example, in a Chapter 7, which you would typically see an individual file, they're walking in. A Chapter 7 is a very, very quick process. It only lasts about 90 days, assuming there's no issues. So the person files, and if they have no assets, then at the end of the 90 days, they're going to get what's called a discharge, and all of that debt is wiped out. So if you have someone who personally guaranteed a lot of corporate debt, they file for Chapter 7. 90 days later, they could have gone in with $1 million owed to their landlord for personally guaranteed debt, 100,000 to their credit card companies, whole host of other debts. They'll walk out 90 days later, and that personal liability will be gone. They'll come out a blank slate. They will have no more obligations. There are exceptions. You can't walk away from child support. You can't walk away from alimony. Limited exceptions. You can't walk away from tax liability. So in that situation, it's great, right? They walked in with so much that now they're walking out scot-free, and they're going to be able to start their life again. So that's what it would look like for an individual after they went into bankruptcy.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's not a topic that nobody would like to go through, but we have to also accept in businesses, different things happen. Like you said, you can have a super successful restaurant in New York. COVID happened. It closed so many businesses because for months they were closed and there was no choice, and they had liabilities and debts. And it just, like you said, give a person space to breathe, to start over, to be fresh. And it's like a
Yeah,
forgiveness from the
right.
legal system and the government and your creditors or whatever. They have to forgive you. They don't have a choice. So yeah, it's in life that we never know what's gonna happen to us, and I think it's important. That's why we have you here today, to just learn about those things. But I read something interesting in your bio, that you had some personal challenges in your life, through your life. So can you share a little bit about your story, because I think it's very inspiring.
Yeah, well, I was born with it's a genetic condition. It's called cystic fibrosis. So it's a genetic condition that affects your lungs. So when I was born, they told my parents he's not going to make it past 18. And then when I was like a little older, they're like, all right, he'll make it to 32. But it was, for me, it affects, my sister had it as well, and she had to have a double lung transplant when she was 23.
No.
So it's a lot harder on women for some reason. Uh, for men, it's a little different. Like, it didn't really start to affect me until I was about 17, 18. But, you had to do your medicine every day, your therapy, you had to keep yourself very healthy because it's a degenerative disease. Like, it slowly causes a
Yeah.
decline. And then around the age of 31, we had just gotten married, and I wasn't feeling great, just very, very sluggish. So I went into the hospital, and usually when I would go to the hospital, they would like do what's called a cleaning. Like, they would give us antibiotics, and they would do therapy, and they would just kind of clean everything up. Usually when I would leave that, I would come out and I would feel like $1 million. I was there for a week. I came out and I was like, I still feel like crap. This is a problem, right? Because they would say eventually there's like this drop off. So now I'm getting concerned because my wife was pregnant at the time. So I'm now about to be a father. I'm having daily panic attacks about this. But for years, they were saying there's just going to be this cure. For years, there's this cure coming. It's coming. It's coming. My doctors diagnosed me while my mother was still pregnant with me. So they're like aunts to me. So I would see them all the time, talk to them all the time. They would say, "Don't worry, it's coming. It's coming. This cure is coming." So it's 2019, September 2019. I'm just about to turn 32, right? And they told my parents 32, that's his expiration date. And so we had a big client, and he goes, "Tommy, I want to talk to you about a case." I go, "Okay. You want to talk about it over lunch?" He goes, "No, I want to talk about it over a round of golf. Do you play golf?" And I go, "Yeah, sure. I never played golf in my life." So he goes, "Okay, great. We're gonna play Friday." It was Monday. So I go, "Okay. I call a trainer, a golf trainer. I'm like, listen, I have to play golf Friday with a big client and I can't embarrass myself. He's like, you have to play Friday? I go, yeah. He goes, you've never picked up a club? I go, never. He goes, oh my God. So I was there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for hours. I was like, just make me look somewhat competent. He was like terrified for me. I go to the sporting goods store. I walk in, I go, listen, I have to play golf on Friday and I don't have anything. And the guy at the store, he's like, oh my God. He goes, is this for business? I go, yeah. He goes, oh my God. He goes, he was like more nervous than I was. He goes, where are you playing? I said, the Atlantic Golf Club out in the Hamptons. He goes, oh my God. He's like, oh, okay, okay. Just go pick out an outfit. He's like, just go get the pants, the polo, the socks, the shoes. Tell me how much you want to pay. I'll meet you at the cash register. And he just starts picking clubs up, putting it in the bag for me. So he gets me all set up. So it's Friday. We go out. Beautiful course. And we're playing. We're having a good time, good group of guys. And at the time, we had to do IVF to get pregnant. So we were still with our like IVF doctor. And they'll release you once they're like, this is a viable pregnancy.
Yeah.
Right. So my wife texts me, she goes, Tommy, it's a viable pregnancy. They're releasing us to our regular doctor. I was like, this is the best news. Now I felt free to tell the guys. I was like, guys, we're pregnant. So everyone's like, woo, like everyone's excited. So then I'm sitting there and my doctor texts me. And it's 4 days before my 32nd birthday. It's like September 26, 2019. So she goes, the drug just came in. The drug I've been telling you for 15 years was coming is in. Come in on Monday, which would be 27th, the 29th. So I go, okay. I'm like, this is the best news day. I don't tell the guys this because it's more private, but it's like, I'm like, this is the best news day ever. And then for years, I don't know if you know who Boomer Esiason is, but he was a quarterback for the New York Jets, right, at the football team. His son had cystic fibrosis, has cystic fibrosis. So Boomer was always like the spokesperson for the disease. He did scholarships, he did fundraisers, he made it visible to the United States. Before that, it was a very unknown condition. So we're playing, and I've never met Boomer Esiason in my life. He's given me scholarships in the past, like his foundation. Never met him in my life. There's a group of guys playing behind us. And they drive up, and some tall guy gets out. He goes, do you mind if we play through? And we're like, sure. And he walks over and he goes, hi, I'm Boomer. I was like, what? Of all the days, I find out that I'm playing golf for the first time. I find out that my wife has a viable pregnancy, that I'm going to get this drug that's going to cure my CF. And I meet Boomer Esiason at a golf course. It was the craziest day of my life. And then the day ended with us all sitting having a drink with Boomer at the club. So 3 days later, go to the doctor's office. The nurses, they're all crying because it's like they watched me from a baby deal with this condition. Crying, we're hugging, we're laughing, and you could tell by the pictures of me, like I was not feeling well. You could see it in my face. And 3 days later, it was like someone turned the air on. It took 3 days for that drug to take effect. And I was sitting there just like taking these huge deep breaths. I was like, this is what it feels like. This is how you guys regularly breathe. And it was it was a miracle. It was a real life miracle. And, that's my CF story. It's now it's all in the past.
Yeah. So did you build a relationship with Boomer because did he give you the story? No?
Everyone's like, "Did you tell Boomer?" I'm like, I didn't say anything. I just said, "Hey, nice to meet you."
I
I
think
didn't
you
want to
guys,
I didn't want to make myself like a spectacle, like, "Oh, hey, I have this disease," like around a bunch of guys playing golf. They would have brought the mood way down. But I was just like, hey man, nice to meet you. But
Yeah.
everyone asked that question, like, you didn't say anything to him. But it's funny, my dad always says, like, when he hears someone with CF, they have a distinct cough. It's like very deep. So he said I could pick up that cough like a mile away. If I heard someone cough like that, and I cleared my throat in front of Boomer, I was like, and he shot me a look like that. Like he picked it up like that. I was like, this guy knows because he's a dad. But it was funny. But
Yeah.
no, I didn't say
Wow.
anything to Boomer.
What a story and what a miracle. And the universe has its way. And bringing him on that golf course, like someone you look up to, and on the day you hear you're going to get your medicine. I'm sure you're going to cross paths with him again, and you should share your story. And, or he might listen to some of your podcasts, you telling this, but it's really amazing. So I want to conclude. This is very inspiring for many people because we all go through something, and every problem seems big to us, but like you said, we don't even appreciate our lungs working well because we just have them
Right.
working well. We don't even understand how is it not being able to take the full breath. And it's something to think about, because you said, oh, this is how it feels. We don't even know how it feels because for us it's normal. And we're just used to it. So how did this, in building your business, how did you stay mentally strong, like when someone tell you, oh, you're going to live 32 years old, and you're still there building your business, building your family? How did you mentally overcome those things? Because business on its own bring other struggles, and I think this resilience in you is something that many people need.
It's a good point um about the resiliency. I would like to say that I'm like this really resilient person who is constantly giving himself pep talks. But my wife will always say, I don't understand how you operate under deadlines. She goes, it causes me so much anxiety. And she goes, for you, it just doesn't. And I think that's because I don't make problems bigger than they are in the moment. So if I tell you you're going to have a lung condition that's actively trying to kill you, that's a problem, right? But if you say it like that, it sounds so big.
Mm.
And it is a serious problem. But if you spin it and tell yourself, I just need to be healthy today. I need to drink water, exercise, eat right. It's all you have to do today to deal with this problem. It becomes way more manageable. That's all I'm going to do today. I can't think about 10 years from now. It's not in my control. All I can do is control today.
Yeah.
And that's how I would deal with it. And the same thing with business. There's so many things that happen in business that in the moment cause so much anxiety and stress. And you're like, how am I going to deal with this? But, I have good mentors. And when I speak to them, they're like, there's going to be another problem tomorrow. This doesn't stop. There's gonna be another problem tomorrow. Just deal with the problem today. And that's it. And then enjoy your life. And that's the way I deal with business and a personal issue like CF is just do what you need to do the right way today.
I love
And
that.
those days will build up. There was someone else who said, oh, I was talking to her, I had CF, and he said the way he dealt with it was like I'm going to get the most out of life. So I'm going to do everything I can in a quick amount of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I wish my answer was that cool. I was like, it's not.
No,
I'm not like I'm
yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I found that as well as entrepreneur, I'm very like speed of implementation is important in business, and I love implementing things. So I make a decision, I put a deadline, and I just do it. And sometimes my clients, when I'm consulting and coaching, I tell them, look, what if like or people want to start a business and they're struggling, and I just tell them, what if you have one more year to live? You don't want to have
Right,
regrets. Just do it. Stop
right.
overthinking about mistakes and failures and things. Just do it. And I think I love that point, like that person said, because that probably drives you. I'm gonna have 32. I want to do what's fun for me and enjoy and build and achieve as much as possible. But Also, I think what you said is something that I'm going to personally take on board, and I think listeners to take on board. Is it was really amazing tip to deal with things one day at a time. Don't look into future in 10 years, because you cannot change anything in the future. And look at you, I mean, you manifested a change for yourself, and there is no, everything is possible, like they say.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I don't want to get spiritual, but like the universe sends you what you need. I'm a strong believer in that, but you got to be open to it. And if you're just focusing on doing like living your life the right way day in, day out, there's going to be days where you fall short. But if you do it more often than not, you're going to get great results. And like all these different opportunities are going to present themselves to you. And the big thing with that drug was you had to stay healthy enough to take it. If you were
Yeah.
below a certain point, it wouldn't have had the same positive effect. If you would let your health decline so much, it would only bring you back so much. So you had to keep yourself at like baseline. And the only way to do that was to take each day at a time. Like I'm going to be healthy each day, right? So
Thank you, Thomas, so much for being here and sharing this story and your knowledge. And the personal story was very inspiring. And we're going to make sure to invite all the listeners, connect on LinkedIn with Thomas Frank. If you're United States, if you need anything from legal standpoint, reach out to their firm. And yes, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe, download the episode, share it with at least one person that can benefit from it, and keep on listening. I will see you in the next episode.